6:50 is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Ms. Phillips,
Here.
Mr. Rue,
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here. Has proper legal notice been given of this hearing?
Notice of a public hearing for the purpose of considering the proposed amendment to the sign district overlay map for 11 acres at 4700 South Charleston Pike from manufacturing sign district to commercial highway district was published in the Springfield News and Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city. Attached here too is a true and correct copy of the legal notice published on February 9, 2023.
I move that the communication be ordered, received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. Is there a motion to adjourn the?
Nope.
Right?
Can we have a staff report?
Okay, staff report.
Good evening, everyone. The applicant is requesting to change the sign district for a proposed sign. In addition to city zoning, each parcel annexed to the city is assigned a sign district with specific regulations pertaining to Chapter 1175 of the Springfield Zoning Code. Any amendments to the districts and regulations established per code are heard by the City Planning Board, and for this request, since the parcel is within CEDAR territory, it was heard by the CEDAR Regional Planning Commission. The current manufacturing sign district does not allow for sign pole heights to exceed 35 feet and limits the total square foot of signs. The requested commercial highway sign district allows for the proposed pole height and provides additional bonus for the parcel sign areas. Return reports from city staff state no objection and recommend approval with a comment from City Planning and Zoning Division. Upon preliminary review of the proposed signs as provided by applicant, it was found the parcel will require a change in sign district to suit the property owner's signage requirements. If approved, the commercial highway sign district regulations will apply for any sign permit reviews. The applicant's the staff recommends approval of the applicant's request to change the sign district from manufacturing to commercial highway. The applicant's request was recommended for approval at the CEDAR Regional Planning Commission meeting, and there were no objections or questions from the public. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments?
Have we received any objections at all?
None. No.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to file the notice?
So moved.
Is that where we are?
No, I think we're ready to adjourn.
I
What?
withdraw my
We're
second.
ready to adjourn. If
Is there a
no,
motion
if no
to adjourn?
comment.
I will withdraw my second.
Well,
You need to
so
withdraw.
moved.
There you go. I'll second that to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop.
Yes.
You want me to, the public hearing scheduled for 6:55 to consider proposed amendment to development plan at 125 Tuttle Road has been canceled. The applicant withdrew the application. Okay? Now we're ready to proceed with the city commission meeting?
Yeah.
The city commission meeting is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Ms. Phillips.
Here.
Mr. Rue.
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here, please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for the opportunity to make decisions. Help us to make them well and to listen well to each other and to the audience. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the
Flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Is there a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. The clerk will proceed with first readings by title only.
Amending the sign district overlay map of Springfield, Ohio as adopted in ordinance number 10317 by amending 11 acres at 4700 South Charleston Pike, Springfield, Ohio, from manufacturing sign district to commercial highway sign district. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Sinet Industries LLC, doing business as Cut to Perfection lawn and snow removal services for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city for an amount not to exceed $50,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with ET's Lawn Maintenance and Landscaping LLC for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city for an amount not to exceed $50,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Four Corners Property Management LLC for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city for an amount not to exceed $50,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Lewis and Roebuck Services LLC for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city for an amount not to exceed $50,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Gary Gilbert Jr., doing business as Gilbert's Lawn Service for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city for an amount not to exceed $50,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Mike Lawn and More LLC for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city for an amount not to exceed $50,000.
These are first readings. Any questions or comments? Yeah,
Um,
we will not vote on them this evening.
I was wondering, Mr. Heck, if you could give us an overview of how the Moda Own program's going, and also our new program with the probate court, which we called receivership. I know, Jill, that's not the technical name of it, but it's what we knew it as. How those two programs are working.
Yes, Commission. So specifically as it relates to the items that are on the agenda, these are for our code enforcement, weed and grass cutting contracts. And so we do have 6 vendors that we set up purchase orders for. They're each set up to an amount not to exceed 50,000, but understand not each vendor will obtain that. We'd like to have as many vendors available as possible, depending on how the weed and grass seasons go in Ohio. We may need all 6 at one point. We may need 1 at one point. So we'll assign that through there. As far as Moda Own, our Moda Own program's been in place since 2016. We've had over 180 properties that have transferred. So a Moda Own property is a property that was a vacant lot in a neighborhood, and we actually changed the requirements to, if you're within 1,000 feet of that lot, you can take it through the Moda Own program as long as you're in good standing with the city, no code enforcement violations on any existing properties you own, et cetera. And then after one mowing season, we take that through the land reutilization program, which allows us to take that because they've been forfeited to the state. So it allows the city to bring those in, and then we deed or title those properties over to the individuals that took it on through the Moda Own program.
Saves us from having to maintain, mow, and clean up those.
Yeah, so these properties that are eligible for the Moda Own are properties that have been abandoned and forfeited to the state. And the state, even though they are technically in ownership, pass that responsibility. If you want them mowed, you have to take on that responsibility locally. And so we do those. We actually do those in-house from the service department. That was something we brought in-house many years ago through an analysis through a Lean Six Sigma program that we actually could do it more efficiently and effectively in-house. And so it takes those off the list that we have to mow. And then as far as the receivership program is concerned, that is a program that allows us to address the vacant structures that we have in our community and hopefully revitalize and redevelop those structures. Not every house is one that has to be demolished. We certainly have demo programs and we have houses that need to go through the demolition. But we also have some houses with good bones, and with the right care and the right upkeep, they can be brought back into productive use. And so the receivership allows us to take these properties into court, and the judge can order the owner of those to either make the repairs themselves to bring it back up to code, or it gets assigned to a receiver. The property owner then has an opportunity after the receiver's done the work to either pay off the receiver for the work that's been done, or at that point, the judge can transfer title to that receiver, who then can either rent, sell, etc., of that property, putting it back into productive use.
As I understand it, with the receivership program, there are in fact some of the structures where there is no living owner.
That is correct. And actually, the first cases we took were kind of low-hanging fruit because they were properties that the owner passed away and got held up for some reason in the estate, or was never assigned through probate. And so it's just kind of sat there and nothing's happened with it. And so we did start with those properties so that we could get the program up and running and moving. We filed 3. We're working through those first 3, and we have another grouping that we're ready to take here soon.
The receiver of those properties would be responsible for then, again, maintaining the properties, including picking up garbage, cutting the grass, kind of thing. So again, it improves the community. It takes us off our back, whether it's city crew or one of the firms that we're hiring. We're no longer having to maintain.
Yeah, and honestly, the biggest benefit is it puts more housing units back into productive use. You hear throughout the news, we are across the country experiencing a housing shortage, and that's no different than in Springfield. And it brings these properties back into productive use.
And I would think it also creates jobs for the people doing the work on these homes.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Would there, what happens if there was a circumstance in which someone was given the ownership, they did the program, and it was stated, okay, you're going to receive the property, but then it was a conflict with the city? Has that ever, was there ever anything, or would there be anything that could cause the property to not go into the person's hands?
Into the MODA own program?
Yeah, if they began that process and they were doing well, or what would be some of the reasons why that wouldn't take place?
Again, I'm not aware of any cases like that so far since we started the program, but certainly there could be an instance where a property owner falls out. Like, I talked about code compliance and so forth. So maybe they mowed that lot, but they own other properties and they were not, and became a violator through code enforcement. And by time it came to actually transfer that property, it's like, well, you have outstanding violations with the city. How are you going to rectify those?
And if there was someone that was participating and ran into some hiccups like that, who would that person need to see if they were looking to get additional questions answered or anything like that?
Yeah, they could work directly with our community development department, and that's 937-324-7380.
Okay, thank you.
I think the MODA Own program has been an excellent program.
Yeah, sounds great.
It takes a whole lot of effort away from us, and the people who mow it and get to own it, take good care of it.
Yeah, and I will just say anecdotally, so we've transferred over 180 properties since the program. When we started the program in 2016, we had on average between 300 and 350 abandoned lots that we mowed. Yes, we've taken 184 offline, but our list of abandoned properties still sits at about 300 to 350. So it seems like as soon as we take one off the books, we add one back on. So
Still cool to hear.
Yeah.
Like almost 200 properties. That's an awesome thing.
Yes, I think again, it's putting it back into
Yeah.
productive use and people within the neighborhoods
It's
taking
empowering.
ownership for it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions about first readings? Clerk will proceed with second readings.
Vacating the first alley north of Edwards Avenue from Henry Street to the north right-of-way line of the DT&I Railroad.
To adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Approving general salary increases for non-bargaining unit employees pursuant to Section 175.03C of the codified ordinances of the City of Springfield, Ohio, authorizing the city manager to do all things necessary to implement such increases.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing and directing the city manager to select certain identified parcels of real estate that constitute non-productive lands and to notify the prosecuting attorney or the county auditor of Clark County, Ohio, as the case may be, pursuant to sections 5722.03 and 5722.04 of the Ohio Revised Code, that the city wishes to acquire said parcels pursuant to the provisions of Ohio Revised Code Chapter 5722 and ordinance number 98-293 passed August 25th, 1998, and to do all things necessary to acquire said parcel.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
This is MODA owned.
Yes, that is correct. These are more properties that we're taking through that land reutilization program that have been a part of the MODA own process.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving an amendment to the contract with the Ohio Bell Telephone Company, doing business as AT&T Ohio for a one-year extension in connection with certain telephone services for municipal purposes for an amount not to exceed $48,000.
Move to adopt. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Have you had any service issues with AT&T or are satisfied with that?
We're satisfied with this contract, Commissioner, and this is for the analog phone lines that the city has for things like the fire alarms and elevators and things like that.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing an increase to the master services agreement with Verdantis LLC for professional consulting services to be used by various city departments for an amount not to exceed $603,139 for a total agreement amount not to exceed $618,139.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Curious just exactly what kind of consulting service is coming.
Yes, this is specifically for brownfield redevelopment. So this includes two properties. One is the former Euclid Elements and surrounding properties, so the Sunflower Field and some other lots in the southwest quadrant. And then the former, the Kenton and Burt Street site, the former BOMAG facility, where we're going to be constructing a fire station and hopefully some other development. But this was a grant that we were able to receive. Kudos to Bobby Bruno and Steve Thompson for their work on this, but this will allow for the phase 2 environmental assessment work to continue on those properties.
That Euclid Chemical site.
Yeah, it'll definitely be good. Phase 1 environmental assessments have been conducted, leading to the need for phase 2 environmental assessments, which will be involving various testing, and so it's much needed.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefor, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum aggregate principal sum of $268,500 in an anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay the cost of constructing sidewalks, curbs, and gutters comprised in the 2023 Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program at various locations throughout the city and declaring an emergency.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and enter into water supply revolving loan account loan agreement with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and Ohio Water Development Authority to finance a portion of the city's 2023 miscellaneous water line replacement project, authorizing the city manager and the director of finance to do all things necessary to implement said loan application and agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions?
Yeah, if Brian could speak a little bit about this. This is a program that people need to be familiar with what we're able to do for these pipe replacements.
Yeah, and I may have Chris Moore speak a little bit more directly, but what this is setting up funding for is for our 2023 water line replacement project, and specifically what we're targeting is the lead service lines. And this is a very favorable term with this program we're entering into. Provides for $546,000 in principal forgiveness, $484,000 of the loan at 0% interest, and $661,000 at 1.78% through the OWDA piece of that. And again, this was allowing us to replace the water services from Monroe to John Street along South Fountain. Typically, our lead service program replaces the lead water line from the main to the meter. This loan program and grant program allows us to replace not only up to the meter, but also from the meter into the house or to the house, and eliminating any lead service line that is part of our water system.
This is normally a burden on the landowner, the property
Yeah,
owner, right?
typically the way the program works is, again, we're responsible from the main to the meter.
Mhm.
And then the property owner, we make them aware that they potentially could have lead associated with their service line from the meter into the house. And we connect them with resources, names of plumbers and stuff where they have the work done. But this program is going to allow us to replace the whole piece.
And South Fountain is a rough road to travel right now, but this may delay a little bit on the paving project, or what do you think it will for South Fountain or not?
Yeah, so again, we are working towards ultimate paving of South Fountain throughout this stretch as well. But as we have with any of our roads, we don't want to just throw money away. And so if there's work that needs to be done to the underground infrastructure, we want to get that work done first before we would pave the roadways, because then we would just be tearing up brand new roadways. So we're trying to be smart. The completion date for this specific project, which that contract will come up later to award, is completion of June 2024. And then we would hopefully start working towards the actual road piece of that. The reason why all the way through June of 2024 is supply chain issues. Some of the fittings and fixtures and stuff, they're 50 weeks out. So we're running into a lot of supply chain issues on our project.
If Chris could also always give us those quotes on the price of the pavement and the differences, the different levels, as you share that out, that would be awesome. And if somebody has a concern about a pothole, what they could do for that. Thank you.
If someone has a concern about a pothole, the easiest way to report it is anywhere you navigate on our website at springfieldohio.gov. There's a button that says report a concern. And you can go there, report a pothole, a street light out, a missing sign, whatever you want to report. It's a great way to get to us anytime, day or night. You can also call us at 937-525-5800.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes,
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of 8 2023 Ford Police Interceptors from National Auto Fleet Group for an amount not to exceed $404,825.92 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring it an emergency therein.
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. These are cruisers that we've been trying to buy for several years. Am I correct?
That's correct, Commissioner. And these are the 2023 cruisers that are budgeted for this year. I believe we just received word that we are going to receive this year the cruisers that we ordered in 2022. These cruisers are actually an order that was incorrect for another municipality. So these 8 cruisers are sitting on a lot in California, and we are hoping to be the first one to get a purchase order to purchase those vehicles. So,
All right. Are they black and white? Do we know?
So there is a chance that we will not be the first and we'll be back to you to purchase again, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes,
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an amendment to the agreement with Marker Incorporated, doing business as Marker Construction, for the construction of a new fire station to be located on South Limestone Street to establish the GMP2 as $6,470,551 and declaring it an emergency therein.
so moved.
Second.
A second?
Yes, second.
Anything else, Commissioner?
I think it's just worth saying, we don't normally have $6 million emergency resolutions, but this one needs to happen because why, Brian? As quickly as it,
So we can keep moving.
yeah. So if this was to delay, it could delay the project longer if we waited on it first. And second. So worth saying.
Anyone else?
I
Anyone?
think it's pretty good timing that you had a fire truck go by just as we were getting to this particular ordinance.
It was
So,
timed.
well
And
played.
that.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes,
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving a cancellation agreement with LexisNexis, a division of RELX Incorporated, formerly known as LexisNexis, a division of Reed Elsevier Incorporated, to terminate the enterprise zone agreement with LexisNexis and declaring an emergency therein.
so moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, this is rather unusual for us to terminate. I was wondering if you or another staff member could comment on it.
Yeah, I'll actually ask Tom Franzen, our Assistant City Manager and Director of Economic Development, to talk to that.
Well, this is actually an agreement that goes back a long way, so I've been here a long time. But we entered into, first of all, this comes at the request of LexisNexis to terminate it, but as an abatement that we entered into in 2003. It was a 10-year, 60% abatement, and the abatement ended in 2014, so the effectiveness of it. But at that time, we wrote our agreements. We had an attorney that had had some unique clauses in there. This one required that the commitments be kept in place for twice the period of the abatement, so 20 years, but didn't start until the last year of their employment ramp. So they had a 3-year employment ramp that went from 2004 to 2007. So the 20-year clock didn't start until 2007. So it's been going on as far as the commitment. They haven't reported in 10 years. It hasn't been necessary. They met all their commitments from investment. They've doubled the amount of investment. They met the jobs requirements and all of those things typical with the enterprise zone agreements. But we felt that the 20 years, we don't write agreements that way. There's no company that can project what's going to happen 20 years from now. So we don't require that in today's agreements. However, LexisNexis is a data center, and they've been obviously affected by the technology advances and a lot of stuff moving to the cloud. So they want to, right now, they're only using a fraction of that facility. So what they would like to do is attract a buyer to come in and fully utilize the facility, and then they would lease their portion that they're currently using. So they can continue to own it and limp along, but it's really not going to meet that full utilization that we would want from an investment and from a jobs perspective. And so they've asked to terminate the agreement. We've agreed to do that, that they can market the property.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the Airport Vegetation Management Agreement 2021-2025 with Jeffrey A. Goodbar to reduce the agreement by approximately 10 acres and declaring an emergency therein.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? The audience? Clerk will call the roll.
O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving the acceptance of a donation in the amount of $4,056.60 from Mark Robertson for the purchase of trees to be planted in the city right-of-way or on city-owned property and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Thank you,
Just-
Mark Robertson.
Yes, that just touched my heart. Like I was wanting to jump in there to make sure I got on the record to make that motion. That's so exciting. It's great to hear. Thank you.
Anybody in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 8 to the agreement for professional engineering consulting services between the city and Strand Associates Incorporated in connection with the combined sewer overflow long-term control plan to modify the hourly billing rates, confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from January 1, 2023 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 1 to the contract between the city and Majors and Enterprises Incorporated for the 2022 miscellaneous sewer replacement project to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $85,318.38 for a total amount not to exceed $1,008,786.97, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 1 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Majors Enterprises Incorporated for the 2023 miscellaneous water service replacement project for an amount not to exceed $1,667,746 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an LPA agreement number 37156, amendment number 1 between the city and the Ohio Department of Transportation in connection with the CLA propane lawnmowers, PID number 114182, to modify the funding sources and declaring an emergency therein.
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Sterling Quality Concrete LLC for the 2023 Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program, Phase 1, for an amount not to exceed $305,375.50 and declaring it an emergency therein.
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with A&B Asphalt Corporation for the Durr Road paving project for an amount not to exceed $1,837,356.49 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
When's it going to start?
Hopefully as soon as possible.
That's not
the-
looking for.
The contractor is ready to go as soon as the contract is processed, signed, assuming you approve it tonight.
Sounds good.
They want to get us as close to the top of the list as possible.
I think it's wonderful.
As I recall.
What do you think, Jim? Isn't it wonderful?
As
All
I
sorts of
recall,
vigor
Durr
with that
Road is
response.
remaining unchanged. It will simply be a paving project.
That's all right.
As it's currently.
Yes, it will be a shave and pave with the same lane configuration as it exists. We'll also have the orphan sidewalk that's missing will be filled in and ADA curb ramp.
Honest to God, the people that drive that route every single day are going to be thrilled. If nothing ever happens to it after this, they can not worry about damaging their car any longer.
Absolutely. No, this is much needed. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Absolutely.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving the acceptance of the material terms of the CVS settlement agreement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding regarding the pursuit and use of potential opioid litigation settlement funds and consistent with the material terms of the December 9, 2022 CVS settlement agreement available at nationalopioidsettlement.com and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I was wondering what are the limitations on the use, or what are the directions on the use of these dollars, or do you know?
Yeah, they've released some information from the One Ohio on how the funds can be utilized. It's honestly, it's kind of all across the board of how you can, one, either reimburse for past expenses that have incurred because of the opioid crisis or establish new programs, policies, work with partners, schools, and so forth. We're working to develop what our strategy will be with the funds. Part of the problem is we don't know exactly what we'll receive through these settlements. They set out an ideal what you might get as a community, but there's no guarantees of that because what'll happen at some point is some of these companies will declare bankruptcy ultimately, and that can throw for a loop the ability. Now, obviously, these are some of the bigger companies, so that's less likely, but that could impact and affect the ability to actually receive settlement dollars through this. But we'll work on a strategy. We've received a very small amount so far from the first settlement. This is actually the second wave, and then there's probably going to be at least one more, a third wave, but it's hard to predict what we'll actually receive in funding through this program.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving the acceptance of the material terms of the Walgreens settlement agreement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding regarding the pursuit and use of potential opioid litigation settlement funds and consistent with the material terms of the December 9, 2022 Walgreens settlement agreement available at nationalopioidsettlement.com and declaring an emergency therein.
I'll move.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving the acceptance of the material terms of the TIVA settlement agreement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding regarding the pursuit and use of potential opioid litigation settlement funds and consistent with the material terms of the November 22nd, 2022 TIVA settlement agreement available at nationalopioidsettlement.com and declaring an emergency therein.
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill, Ms.
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving the acceptance of the material terms of the Walmart settlement agreement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding regarding the pursuit and use of potential opioid litigation settlement funds and consistent with the material terms of the November 14, 2022 Walmart settlement agreement available at nationalopioidsettlement.com and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue, Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving the acceptance of the material terms of the Allergan settlement agreement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding regarding the pursuit and use of potential opioid litigation settlement funds and consistent with the material terms of the November 22nd, 2022 Allergan settlement agreement available at nationalopioidsettlement.com and declaring an emergency therein.
Adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? So all of those are basically the same thing with a different company involved.
So as you know, this is part of the One Ohio, and we received the first round of settlements. These are the second large group of it's 3 pharmacies and 2 manufacturers that have now agreed with the state of Ohio to settle. So we only know the large amount for the state, and though we don't know the specific distributions, but we have till April 18th that we have to opt in or we're not part of the settlement. So this is our legislation that we will formally submit to be part of the settlement.
If there is no doubt in my mind, serving on the Substance Abuse Task Force that represents a lot of organizations and governmental units here in Clark County and Springfield, that the opioid hit our community and the state of Ohio particularly hard. And a lot of people have been affected by that. So I look forward to our ability to take these funds and make good use of them to help some of our citizens recover from this opioid epidemic that we have faced and continue to face in our community and in this state.
In the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Strongly urging the legislative branches of the federal government, as well as the state of Ohio to enact legislation to further protect the citizens of the city of Springfield, Ohio, from the inherent dangers of another train derailment on the track located in or near our city and declaring an emergency therein.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
consenting to the appointment of Roxana Root to the City Planning Board and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Appointing Nate Fleming to the Springfield Historic Landmarks Commission and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Supporting the inclusion of the Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati 3C and D corridor in the Ohio Rail Development Commission submission to the 2023 Corridor Identification and Development Corridor ID Program.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Brian, what kind of an investment locally are we going to have with regards to the last time something like this came by, we bought a railroad station? What are we going to do? Are we going to be required to do that before?
What this is doing is making sure that if this happens, and it appears more likely this time, and it came up at the Transportation Coordinating Committee the other day, we were asked to take action in support of it. We want to make sure that it, in fact, this new passenger, high-speed passenger rail would also include service to Springfield. We think that's critical for continuing development of our community. It appears, unlike his predecessor, that Governor DeWine is in support of high-speed rail connecting the three big cities, but would also include Dayton and Springfield in that connection. So I wanted to urge my fellow mission members to support this resolution. I know we've been visited in the past. You may want to speak to what you learned.
Yeah, certainly. So this project was originally proposed back 2008, 2009 timeframe, and then was struck out of the governor at the time's plan, Governor Kasich. It's coming back up. What this submission specifically does is allows the state of Ohio to request federal funding to develop a feasibility study. That feasibility study would address and discuss a little bit more of what the investment would be throughout the state, including the train stops. So at this point in time, we would not have really any idea of what local investment may be required to participate. But that feasibility study would help develop those answers. I'm guessing a big piece of this now too is understanding, because Amtrak runs on the same tracks as some of the issues that we've seen here recently. And so I'm guessing the feasibility will look at the ability to actually utilize existing infrastructure versus installing all new infrastructure to support Amtrak.
I must comment, I think it's about time Ohio got with the program. Frankly, when we go visit my family in Springfield, Illinois, there is now high-speed rail connecting St. Louis, Springfield, Illinois, and Chicago. And it's very popular, very well served. And there is no reason we can't do something like that right here in Ohio. It's time for us to catch up.
I'd love to see some of the students within our school district, as well as Giza, specifically my nephew Marius Nash, be able to give some input on things like that, because it's his life dream to operate. He's a freshman in high school. He's studied high-speed trains for years. So that is the field he is wanting to go through. So it'd be great to do some mentorship with that piece.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And allow us to not only catch up with other states, but certainly with Europe
Yes,
and the train systems over there that are incredible, as well as in Asia. We are truly behind the eight ball here in Ohio. And as I said, it's time we catch up. And I'm glad to hear some of our younger people are
absolutely.
interested.
I
That's
know
great.
all about high-speed trains because of him. I would have had no context for this topic, but because of him, I know how behind we are and exactly how efficient and how safe they are.
Great.
Anyone in the audience want to speak to this? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes?
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
That concludes the agenda items.
Are there other comments from the commissioners? Okay, now we're ready for comments from the audience, and I have two cards. Elizabeth Fitzsimmons, 24-6 Kenton Street.
My name is Elizabeth Fitzsimmons. I live at 2406 Kenton Street. Behind my house, I have Mill Run Creek. Back in 1980, it was dredged, and they did a wonderful job. That's been 42 years ago. We are having problems in my backyard. It's like a lake. March the 3rd, we had 2.6 inches of rain, and it came up almost to my house. Now, I'm asking the commission to dredge this creek for not just me out there on Kenton Street, but the other homeowners. Their backyards are just terrible. So I'm asking you guys to look into the situation for me. I've already contacted Dr. Espross, Commissioner, and Steve Moore about it. And they have a lot of knowledge in regards to this problem. Several years ago, they brought a storm sewer from Belmont Meadows down to Texas Avenue and across Kenton Street and dumped it in Mill Run. Now, that's some of the water that's pushing up on our grounds there on Kenton Street. So it is very important to me to have something done. I believe that there should be a dredging process. Back in 80, they started from East Street all the way to Burnett Road. And after they got that done, they also put a culvert there at Burnett Road for the railroad. Now, the railroad is supposed to be helping keeping it clean. I don't think this is happening too much. So this is all I have to say is I hope you take under consideration what I'm asking to dredge Mill Run. Thank you.
I forgot to mention before we started, there's a 3-minute limit on comments from the audience. You did all right. It's fine. Let's see. Who are you?
It was Ms. Simmons.
Fitzsimmons.
Street.
So the other card is from Vicki Pressler.
Right there.
Hi, Miss
Hi.
Vicki.
Hello.
Before you start,
How are you?
she is an employee of Springfield City Schools at Snow Hill. I get to see her every day.
That is correct.
Well, often.
Yes.
Good to see you
Two
here.
more years left.
Amen.
Yes.
That doesn't count against your time. Go
It
ahead.
should. No, I'm kidding. I kid.
Okay, I am here on behalf of the people in our little neighborhood. I live on 26 East 3rd Street, and I am Vicki Pressler. I didn't mention that. We have had a man and a woman living in a car on the 1500 block of Garfield Avenue. So the first week we noticed that they were there, and we've had problems with this couple. They were living with, we think, a mother or a grandmother that lives on this property. And she was fed up with them, and they got kicked out apparently. And then the next thing we noticed, they were in their car living, and he had a dog, and then the dog was living on top of the car, and then the dog warden was called, and the dog warden came and removed the dog because it's not a good place for a dog to live, and apparently it's not a good place for people to live either. So anyway, with that, I called code enforcement, and code enforcement did thankfully come out and speak to the people in the car. And I believe they gave them resources on where they could go. And then a week later, they were still there. Now, as of Monday morning, they're gone, but the weather has been very cold, and so we don't know where they are. And I don't talk to their relative that lives in the house, and really no one else does either. So we're not really sure of the situation, but he does come back. Now, they have a history of aggressive and very loud verbal arguments, and the police has been called multiple times within the past year. So what I'm asking is that after doing some research and looking at the ordinances, that we do not have an ordinance in place for the city of Springfield for people living in their vehicles in a residential neighborhood. Now, maybe there is and I've missed it, but I've looked and I couldn't find one. And I know that working in the city school system, I know that we have a number of homeless people, and I know that people hit hard times. But when people have been given the resources, there needs to be a follow-up, and I believe there also needs to be further action taken to get the people off the street. Because I just feel like with this particular couple, they're unsteady. People walk their dogs by the car. Children ride their bikes by the car, and I just don't feel like it's a safe environment for the neighborhood. So I guess what I'm asking is, can we have an ordinance in place, or what can we do in order to make sure in the future that these things do not continue to happen, because they may happen more and more. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I spoke with Vicki a little bit on this
Yes.
over the phone. And I mean, it's worth looking into to see, I know that she reported recently to the city. I know there's a little action. I drove by there on the way here and I did not see the car, but like you said, there could be a return. More importantly, it's the safety, the
Yes.
concern for the individual, and then the safety. But I want to make sure that you got proper response from the city. I appreciate you coming down here. and
Oh, I
sharing this.
appreciate your time. I will say also, if I can add this quick little thing, we didn't realize, but several months ago, he was actually living on the end of 3rd Street, closer to Limestone at the time. And so I wasn't aware. I usually don't point my car in that direction. Mine's always pointed towards one of the other schools that I work in. So, but someone did point out in the neighborhood that he's been living down there at the end also, which there was a large trash accumulation. So I just know that it happens. I just don't know what we can do about it, and we'd like to see something done.
I just think it's worth noting that her tone in the conversation with me is concern for the safety of the neighborhood, not get this homeless person out of my neighborhood. It was nothing like that. It was very much concern and care. But again, thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time,
Yes.
and hopefully we'll look into this and
Yes.
have some sort of an answer
Yes,
for
there
you.
was also a very violent argument in
Yeah.
the car the other day, and the police were called to that. 2 police officers, 2 different vehicles came and talked to them, but they still remained. So,
I just wanted to piggyback on what Rob had shared. I also spoke with Miss Vicki about this, and just loving that you have stepped out of your comfort zone and come down to City Commission and felt empowered to do so, and to also reach out to Rob as well. Thank you. We appreciate that, because it definitely was from a very good, loving, concerned space. Thank you.
Glenn, I think also it points to the whole issue of homelessness in our community. And while we've taken some steps to try to move forward, we need to continue to find ways to address this issue in a positive way, to get the resources. And it's going to be more than just a physical structure, because the needs are larger than that in some cases. So I think we need to continue to work on this issue as we move forward. And I know it's not something the city can do by itself. It's going to be a multi-agency, multi-governmental approach, because that's the only way we'll have any success. So thank you.
And I definitely wanted to add in, as we move to look for a solution, that we do want to make sure it's a solution that is inclusive and that isn't punitive in a way that makes people, we just want to make sure that all community members feel welcome and have the safety that they need within their lives. So again, just thank you for supporting our community.
Name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Shauna Dover, and I'm partial owner of 537 Fair Street, Springfield, Ohio. And I'm glad I made it down to address my concerns with regard to the Mo to Own program. I had submitted several applications around the property that we own at 537 Fair Street, and that was back in November. In January, I was contacted stating that the properties for which I had submitted applications for in the program had been removed from the program during the time that I had been in coordination with the city about submitting the applications, et cetera. And so I was told that, as I stated, that the properties were no longer included in the program. And I found out also at that time that the vacant properties were being rezoned for a multi-unit 3-level high-rise at the corner of Fair Street and Yellow Spring Street. And I have concerns over safety, number one, as well as why the properties were removed after the applications had been submitted. And how was the location for a 3-story high-rise unit decided upon? What was that process? So several questions that we have surrounding the adjudication of the Mo to Own program. Over. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have to look specifically into the addresses. I don't know off the top of my head what the proposed project have been there. I'm looking at the properties. I assume it's 702 South Yellow Springs, the vacant lots. That's one of the addresses, I assume, or close to it. It still shows it in private ownership, and so I would have to look to see what happened. I don't recall any zoning either that has changed. Looking at zoning real quick. Those are zoned RS8, so any type of multifamily residential high-rise, as you mentioned, that would require a rezoning, which there would be public notice that would be involved with that. And I'm not aware of a case at this moment in time.
Okay. So, Mr. Heck, that's exactly why I'm bringing it to the commission, because I was advised at the time of the rejection, when my applications were returned and my funds were refunded, that the property was being rezoned. In fact, it's about 3 or 4 properties, one adjacent where the Masonic Temple used to be on Fair Street, and across the street as well, there were 2 or 3 vacant lots there. So within that 1,000 square foot area of the property that we own. And I was advised that it was being rezoned, and that was the only information that I found out that I was able to obtain.
Okay, I'll look into it, and if I can get your information, have somebody reach out to you once I learn a little bit more about this.
Absolutely, because it is a true concern that I have for the area. I'm not necessarily sure that that's a great location for a 3-story high-rise with the school right across the street, and the resources that it would take to ensure, crime doesn't increase at that area. So there's quite a few concerns, and also for the enjoyment of the homes and properties in that area. So thank you for looking over.
Could you make sure that we get your contact information?
Absolutely.
Fill out one of the cards for me.
Absolutely.
Ms. Dover, also just a really quick question, just to help us out. Who was it that you spoke to?
Let me get.
Okay, if you could just put that on that card.
That.
If you can get that, and put that on that card that you submit to Jill, that'd be awesome.
I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, both Mrs. Dover.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Is that for real?
Did you get that, Jill?
Yep.
Rob said move to adjourn.
Get
And that
my
lady down
computer
there
to catch
said,
up.
second.
Got it?
I just
Mr.
love sitting
Rue?
here.
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms.